Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And a couple of cards, doing some really simple watercoloring, combining water reactive dye inks with some distress mica stain. I haven't used my mica stain sprays in a while. I do have a playlist of a few dozen videos using mica stain sprays. I've watercolored with them, sprayed, all the things. I'll have that linked this way in the end screen at the end of the video. And then, like always, everything I use to make these cards, I will have listed and linked in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links and end up placing an order, I get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. It's what helps pay the bills, keeps heaters going, enables me to keep bringing out content. And yeah, let's get right into making these cards. So I'm using this beautiful Friend stamp set from SSS Stamp. This came out, I think this was part of their September release last year. I'm honestly not sure. It came out a while ago. It's not new. And I forgot I had it, honestly. It was like sandwiched in between like a couple of holiday sets. So I just, when I was digging through looking for something else, as happens quite often, I came across it and I was like, oh yeah. This one is what I call like a large floral, but yet not enormous because this is just a 4x6 set. I'm stamping it right now onto an A2 size panel, so 4¼ by 5½ inches, just to give you an idea of the size of it. So this one is maybe a less intimidating large floral, because I know for some, like the really big stamps can be quite overwhelming. I love them. But it's nice having options, and this is a nice one. This is a fun one to color. I'm gonna have to use this quite a few more times, definitely. So anyway, I am stamping it onto distress watercolor paper. I had used my anti-static powder tool, and then I stamped it with the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and then I'm heat embossing these with Wow's Clear Matte Dull embossing powder, which this embossing powder doesn't look heat embossed when you're done, because the second it cools off, it goes matte instead of being clear and shiny like a regular clear embossing powder. Does it matter? No, it's just a personal preference, and it just depends on my mood. Sometimes I like the clear and shiny, sometimes I like the matte finish, and that's what I grabbed today. So after I had heat embossed these, the heat embossing gives it the raised edges, which makes watercoloring really easy because it keeps things contained. So I don't have to worry too much about things bleeding where they don't need to go, that sort of a thing. And then for the watercoloring, I am using Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks in Sunbeam and Night, so yellow and navy. And then to add shimmer, I'm adding in some mica stain. So I'm using Harvest Moon with the yellow and then Winter Frost with the navy, and just putting it right on top of the ink on my palette. So I've already shaken up the mica stains really well because that mica settles. So I had already shaken them up really, really well. And then I just used like the nozzle to get some onto my palette. And then I'm going to watercolor with this. And I had got splotches of some of the navy when I'd smushed the ink pad onto the my little palette there. So that's why there's those little splotches there you can see in the yellow. It's fine. It was so little that it didn't actually like affect the color, so I didn't worry about it. So to do the watercoloring, I have sped this up, but this didn't take very long. I just went in with a larger watercolor brush and just clean water. And I painted the entire area so it's wet with clean water. And then I swirled the yellow, so the ink and the mica stain together with a smaller brush, and just drop that in. And then the only thing I do to add to it is I take that larger brush again, where needed, to kind of pull the color out right to the edges of each petal. And that's it. That's it. I'm not adding any other layers. I'm not going to mix any other colors. This just works. And I'll show at the end with my flashlight because you can't see the shimmer at all. But it was kind of neat this time since I mixed the shimmer with the ink. The shimmer stayed more kind of contained towards like the base of the petals. And it's just a neat little look. You can see it in real life, but on camera, obviously. And also because filming with yellow, I've complained about this many times. It'll always be a thorn in my side. Filming and taking photographs with anything yellow, not my forte. It just always wants to go weird. Anyway, But yeah, the shimmer is just fun. It's just fun. So with the navy, it's a lot more obvious how the color moves. So I did the same thing with the leaves. I just painted it with clean water first and then swirled my brush in that night positively saturated ink mixed with a bit of that winter frost and then dropped it in. And because the areas were wet with the clean water, the ink immediately starts to move. And then I'll go back with the larger brush just to pull the color right out towards the tips of the leaves. And that's it. And then I just let it dry. Nothing special, nothing crazy. This was fun, honestly. And like I had said, this image for this stamp set, I'm like, ooh, there's so many uses because this one might go into one of my rotation of large florals that I keep revisiting over and over again because I like them. They're fun. And yeah, that was my color combo for these, navy and yellow. Not something you would think of like doing navy leaves. It was like some random image that was in my feed the other day. And I was just like, yeah, it was like yellow florals and like navy leaves. And I was like, ooh, yes, I like that. I've done this before with other images and doing things like gray for the leaves or brown, just non-green colors. And I encourage people to try it. It's fun to just mix things up a bit, you know? And I'm still on my yellow kick. Again, I don't know. Yellow is a cheerful color, even though it drives me crazy trying to film and photograph with it. I love yellow. It's just pretty and happy. So once I was done my watercoloring, I used the coordinating wafer dies and I die cut all of my florals. And then for my background, I'm using the newer Pepita Pepita background that I have used in a couple of videos already. I really like this background. It's always the black and white version of it, like just how it's sitting on the stamp sheet there, that throws a person off. I get that. But this background, kind of like any geometric background, it has so many uses. I really like just, basic patterns, basic geometric type shapes, etc. because you can just pair them with anything. So for these, I'm using just regular white cardstock. And same thing, I'd used my anti-static powder tool on the cardstock. And then I inked up the background with clear embossing ink. And then I'm coating it with this clear matte dull embossing powder. So this will kind of give you an idea too of what this embossing powder looks like. Because I normally only use it on top of stamped images. As in stamped with, an outline, black ink, etc. But this is how it looks just clear on white. So this, just how it is in the container, sort of that cream color, that's basically how it looks, but without any shine. It is matte. It's neat. I used it to give a little bit more texture and a lot more subtle pattern. So I didn't stamp the background perfectly. I wasn't concerned with that. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's just part of the background and it's just going to give some pattern and some texture. So I melted that with my heat tool. And that's one thing I can't ever really show in video. With this embossing powder, as it melts, you'll see it in person. As it's melting, it's very shiny. The second it cools down, which is almost immediately, it goes matte. It's kind of neat. So I did the exact same thing with the second background. And these panels are A2 size right now. I'm going to trim these down a bit, but yeah, inked up stamp, pressed the cardstock into it, coated it with the embossing powder, tapped off the excess, and then melted with my heat tool until everything was, in this time, instead of smooth and shiny, it's just smooth and matte. But as you can see there, you can really tell the difference between what's been melted and what is still just unmelted embossing powder. So once I've got these backgrounds melted and ready to go, I pulled out my MISTI again and some navy cardstock. This is Simon's soft navy cardstock. And I'm going to stamp a couple sentiments from that Beautiful Friend stamp set. So I lined up my cardstock, same old anti-static powder tool. And then this time I'm going to stamp sentiments with just clear embossing ink. And then these I'm going to heat emboss with detail white embossing powder. So stamp the sentiments, coating them with Simon's detail white embossing powder, tapping off the excess, and then melting these with my heat tool till these ones are smooth and shiny. And then I'll buff off the excess anti-static powder with a microfiber cloth. And then I'm going to die cut these sentiments with the coordinating wafer dies, because the coordinating die set has dies for not just the florals, but also all the sentiments. So I'm going to die cut the sentiments with the coordinating wafer dies, and then off camera I'm also going to die cut more pieces of that cardstock with the coordinating wafer dies, which I'll show later because I'm going to stack those together to build that dimension. So I set all that aside. And my backgrounds, I've decided to trim down. I took like 1/4 inch off each side. So these ends up being 3 3/4 by 5 inches so that the card base will frame it up a bit. So after I've got those trimmed, I'm going to lay these on top of the card base. I'm not going to adhere anything yet, but I'm just going to lay them on top of the card base to give me sort of a visual of where I want to place my florals. And I also pulled out an oldie but goodie, the Leafy Sprig wafer die. This came out a couple years ago. And I die cut that from that same soft navy cardstock. So I've got everything kind of just laid out so that I know where my borders are, so that just depending on whether or not I want to trim things off. With this card front, I kind of wanted to keep everything contained. With the other one, I end up like having a lot of it hanging off, which I'll show later. And then I just trim that off. So I'm going to adhere those die cut leafy sprigs, and then I can adhere my floral on top of that. And all of this I'm just using craft tacky glue. And then once I've got this one adhered into place, I can just tuck that little rosebud that was separate. I can tuck that in as well and just adhere it into place. And then I do the same thing with the second card front. I just use the 2 remaining florals that I had watercolored, and then I die cut more of those leafy sprigs. So I've got my card fronts, and I'm going to put them into my splat box, because of course we're going to add splatter. So I've got my little palette again, and then just some white gouache. Stick that on the palette, take a little bit of water to thin this out, get it to a splatterable consistency. And then I'm going to splatter this all over both of these card fronts. And then after I did that, I let this splatter dry, which didn't take very long. And then I'm going to tint more of this white gouache. And I wanted to get it fairly dark. So I used the re-inker for the Night Positively Saturated ink. It's that navy color. So I'm just going to add a couple drops of the re-inker to this gouache on my palette, and then just a little bit of water to still thin it out. Because even with the re-inker, I found it was still pretty thick. So I'm going to add a little bit of water to this, mix it up, thin it out a bit. Still felt the need to add. You just do whatever works for you. So I added just a smidge more water to it till I was happy with it. And then I'm going to splatter this onto these card fronts as well, just to give it that little extra something. You can technically, I've talked about this, you can technically splatter directly with like the ink. I could have used the ink refill, maybe added a bit of water. I don't really like doing that. I don't like how it looks. A lot of times with using just ink refills or ink itself, like stamping ink to splatter with, I find a lot of times as the ink is soaking into the cardstock, it starts to spread out, because that's what it's meant to do. And it just looks weird. Sometimes it feathers out funny. So that's why I prefer using something like gouache or paint. So I'll just mix to create the color I want. And that's just my personal preference, because you guys know I get picky when it comes to splatter. So I splattered those, let them dry. And then my card bases, those top folding A2 white note cards, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I lined up the card bases inside my MISTI, and I'm stamping that large floral with Sky ink, which is the lightest from the trio. The Night ink was the one I used to watercolor with. This was the lighter shade. So I stamped the floral with that, and then I lined up the card base with the corner of my MISTI, so I could stamp one of the sentiments with the Nocturne ink, and then take the other card base, and I'm going to use one of the other sentiments from the set. So one is going to be just like a friendship card, and then one's going to be a birthday card. So got the sentiment stamped, and that finished off the insides of the cards. And then to adhere the card fronts to the card base, I am putting some of Simon's Big Mama foam tape on the back. So that will give a little bit of dimension. So pop those into place, and then I just flip over the card base and trim off all the bits that are hanging over. So that second card front, this one had a lot more because I had adhered both of the florals. So trimmed off everything hanging over the edges. And then my sentiments, stack those together just with craft tacky glue. So that just gives them that little extra bit of dimension and saves me from having to like trim down little bits of like foam squares or foam tape. And then I can adhere those into place as well. And then I also pulled out the Adeline butterfly wafer die. That's another oldie but goodie favorite. I love it. And I die cut the wings from Simon's Shimmer Vellum. Just adds to the shimmeriness. And the bodies I die cut from scraps of that soft navy cardstock. So adhered the bodies to the butterfly wings with just a little bit of craft tacky glue. And then put just a tiny bit of glue right behind the body so you can't see it through the vellum. And then press that on into place onto these florals. So I love that you can see the florals like through the wings. I love that. Love it. So adhere those into place. And then my final bit of embellishment is these Cottontail confetti from Simon's latest release, which I have used these many times now. I didn't think I would reach for these as much as I have been, but I really like them. They're just pretty. You know, they're not clear and they're iridescent. I don't know. They're just pretty and they've been like working with everything. So I haven't bothered putting them away. They just sit on my desk now. So I adhered those into place with just little dabs of craft tacky glue. Let the glue dry. And then these cards are complete. So I'm going to use my flashlight, which also messes up my camera because then it just messes with the white balance. I don't, the reflection of the shimmer, I think, just drives my camera crazy, but it's pretty. So we've got all that pretty shimmery, sparkly goodness, and then that shimmer vellum. And yeah, these were fun and just a fun color combo too. Just cheerful and still sort of elegant, which is not something I do very often, you know, but yeah, like I mentioned in the intro, I will link to my playlist using the mica stain sprays. So that'll be in the end screen at the very end if you want to check it out. And then all the supplies, everything I used will be listed and linked in the description box below the video. So thank you all so very much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting. It helps a lot and I very much appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!